I'm really, really excited to have somebody doing really great work on the Google Cloud side today. If you are able to hear me talk, do leave a comment saying you are able to hear me, and like we can go ahead and have this conversation. Just to give a background to what we are doing in here, if you know about in 28 minutes, we have been doing a lot of content, right? We create a lot of courses around different topics. But what I thought was, rather than focus, in addition to focusing on content, how do we get into meta content, right? So how do you choose your career path? How do you choose what to learn? And that's where I thought it would be great for you to hear from experts in the field. We have Sathish in here, who's doing wonderful job as far as Google Cloud is concerned, with respect to Google Cloud certifications in particular. And I thought I'll bring him to you and have a conversation with you about his journey and also his advice on how you can take your career forward. Hi, Sathish. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Ranga. Glad to be here. And thank you for having me over.
Glad. Sathish, let's start from, probably we'll start with your technical career journey, right? So can you give a brief overview of yourself? What are you doing technically, and your projects that you're working on right now?
So I started long ago, and I was lucky enough to have a job offer or two as soon as I left college. And a little bit after that, I joined this company called Mindtree. Mindtree, very nice company. The founders are very nice, highly respected. And I was there for a few years, traveling between countries, US. I was in France for a few years managing projects. And then a little into the 2010s, I came back to India for various reasons. And since then, I've been here. And I have not really taken up a full-time job for too long. There were, I think, a couple of jobs I held in between that that lasted probably less than a year for various reasons. The last one, I think, was in 2017, I would guess, where I worked for Red Hat. But unfortunately, they moved a little far away from where I stay. And, traffic, nowadays with the pandemic, there's not much traffic. But at that time, to say I'm going to travel across the city to go to work, it just didn't make sense for me. Absolutely. So in the last about 7-8 years, I haven't really held jobs, except for like 2 short stints here and there. And for the most part, I've just been freelancing. I've been doing my own thing. I've been taking up interesting projects, doing it as and when I like it, and say, okay, what's the next thing that we can do, and move on from there. Awesome. So today, primarily, I'm doing a lot of work on Google Cloud, mostly to help the community, and also I'm taking up some contract projects and all that for people who want help with Google Cloud.
Wow, that's very interesting. So you quit your job to do freelancing, right? Was it easy to make that switch from a job to freelancing?
I won't say it was it was decided I'm going to do absolutely freelancing. I think I've got a history of generally doing whatever I like, right? And even though I don't necessarily come from an extremely strong financial background, over a period of time, there has been some amount of money which gives me the freedom to say, let's do the next best thing, or what's the next interesting thing. And maybe there is a fine line between bravery and foolishness, but I've gone out and said, I don't care about the money. This seems interesting. Let me follow that up. I didn't really realize that, it was the case also. Recently, somebody contacted me from the days from about 10, 12 years ago when we were working together. And he asked, so what are you doing? And before I could answer, he himself said, probably something, whatever you like, it doesn't matter, but you'll be doing well, And I realized that I think people also probably they saw it before me, that I take up what is interesting and try to make a career of it, rather than trying to see where can I find money and then try to fit myself into that role. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but for certain things, I have had the freedom to do that. Our family hasn't been medically, we don't have too much of a problem, right? And in some cases, it might not be possible. They might have loans and all of that. So I had this certain financial freedom that allowed me to experiment and not be tied down to making money. But the good thing out of that is I am financially very independent now. I'm even investing in startups. So it has worked out for me to go freelancing and do whatever I want.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear, Satish. I mean, uh, as you say, I think there are two very important things, right? One is having talent, uh, like having the passion to do something different. The other thing is to make sure that that passion gives you sufficient income to offset your needs, right? So both of them are really, really important. I think a lot of people just say, I have passion towards it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But unless that passion gives you sufficient income to sustain yourself, or you have a backup built over
Yeah.
a little bit of time, I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think that's wonderful point that you made. And it's like, I'll say, definitely say, you are probably not a normal like, it's not a normal choice that you made, because if you look at 100 people, probably 99 of them would use the traditional path, and
Yeah.
I would say you would be probably 1 in 100 or something like that. So is there something which makes you like that, or is it just natural?
I think it might be, we asked this question about personalities, right? Whether it is nurture or nature. Is it
Yeah.
what we are born with? Is it genetics? Is it congenital? Is that personality of being able to experiment, take risks? Is that something that comes with us, or is that something that comes with the environment in which we grew? I honestly don't know, right?
Okay.
I just know that to some extent, I'm willing to take up an opportunity because it gives me something, not necessarily money. Like I would take up a job offer if it was from a country, a remote country, right? If I could travel abroad, if I could live there in that country for a while, I might take up a job even if it doesn't pay me much, right? I would take up certain kind of tasks for other things, like maybe in certain cases you can help the community. Maybe in certain cases it's a travel. Maybe in certain cases reputation. Of course, there would be money also. So I've done it in the past. I don't know exactly why I do it, and I continue to do that. The one important thing that you said is true, though, right? If others are trying to emulate this, I would warn against what you follow up on, right? You have to know the consequences of the actions you take, right? You have to know that just because you're passionate about something, it is not going to sustain you, as you said. And passion in that case has the same negative connotation as the word faith, right? I have faith that this bridge will hold up because it will protect me or whatever. But you can't go on that. You have to go on the concept of, does it really work? And you also have to have the ability to change courses, or change course rather, right? Where you say, I was passionate about this, I was highly interested, but I see that is going nowhere, and you have to cut that short, right? So in certain cases, whether you're doing a startup, which is something that we've done in the past, right? And when it doesn't work, even if you've invested money, you have to come and say, you know what? Sorry, we have to stop now. I can't be following the sunk cost fallacy. I've sunk either money or sunk so much time. I have to continue doing it just because. Right? So I think even if somebody goes out on this, measure yourself in terms of feedback, in terms of reflecting upon what you've done, and see if it matches the goals that you have, whether it's reputation, whether it's money, obviously, right? You need to be financially stable to ensure that you do more and more in life.
Wow. um, that's uh, that's very interesting. Actually, that's not the uh, direction in which I thought the interview would be heading at the
Yeah.
start, but that's a really good start, I would think. Um, Satish, I mean, let's switch attention towards your experience with Google Cloud and
Yeah.
how you came upon building AwesomeGCP, the GitHub repository,
Yeah.
as well as your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
So, what made you go towards that?
Uh, I think it was just serendipity because honestly, I wasn't really thinking about getting into online channels and any of that. What I did do though was I have been running technical communities for a bit. So, for example, the language Go. I today I do quite a lot of work in Go, and in fact, I started the community here in Bangalore around Google's Golang. And when I started working in Golang, it was even before it was generally available, right? I was working with in beta. And the first many years, there was nothing happening. And we started the community, and today Go has become extremely popular, right? And I could see that people were taking advantage of some of the things that I did. and it got into training companies on Go. And around the same time, obviously, cloud is becoming more and more important. Of course, it's been important for quite a while. And previously, I'd worked on Amazon, AWS, and all. And then when I saw Google Cloud, there was interest, right? They seem to be doing some things well, and a lot of my projects during hackathons happened to be on Google Cloud. I wasn't taking up some of the other ones, right? So early on, it was Google Cloud App Engine. So my hackathon projects would be on that. Somewhere along the line, this whole idea of certifications came. I had not done a certification before I did my first Google Cloud certification, and it didn't even matter to me at that point. And then it just kind of snowballed. And I could see that whatever I was writing about certifications was having a certain impact. It was resonating with the community, with the audience, with everybody else. And I think it just snowballed, right? And say, okay, somebody like that, okay, let me write one more article about this. And then something else happened and said, oh, maybe they would like a video. And I did one video, right? That's mostly it. It wasn't like a planned journey, more of something that I saw resonance with the community and say, let's do a little more, let's do a little more.
That's nice. So you just thought, okay, this is something that's good to do. Let's give it a try. And you started putting a video out, probably an article out. And slowly you see that there is a lot of traction. And then you keep building more things to see what happens. Is that the right description?
That's exactly what happened, except that when you say traction, it kind of implies that there was revenue involved, right? That I got money from it. There was none of that, right? I think it was mostly based on the idea that people were finding value in what I was doing, even though I was not making any money from this, right? So when I put out an article on Medium, it doesn't give me anything. The YouTube videos we just discussed before we started this conversation gives you next to nothing when it comes to revenue. So I think what drove me after that was the feedback from the people saying that, hey, this has been valuable for us. I was able to, get a job, or I was able to change jobs because of what you have put out. And I think that has continued to keep me motivated, right? Even today, even though I spend a significant amount of effort and money on creating this channel and, doing all these videos, the revenue has not been the big driver, right? The thing is seeing these people go on LinkedIn and say, you know what, thank you for helping me get the certification. Thank you for helping me get the job. And I think that has been a big motivation, right? Big motivational driver.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, the excitement that somebody doing a certification or somebody getting a job because of something you did, right? I mean, it cannot be expressed in words. I think that's wonderful.
It's like that MasterCard commercial, no? That their success priceless. Right? You can't put a cost on that. You can't put money on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Coming to certifications, right? So, I mean, let's start with probably Google Cloud, right? So you picked up Google Cloud among all the other options that are out there, AWS, Azure. Is there a specific reason that you picked up Google Cloud? And just give me a little bit of background, right? So why did you pick up Google Cloud? What do you think are the differentiators of Google Cloud? And where do you see Google Cloud heading? Where is Google Cloud really different from other clouds?
Well, one of the reasons why I picked it up, and with a lot of other things that I've also done, right? When I picked up the language Go, I was one of the earliest people writing blogs on Google Go, even before it became generally available, right? When it was in beta. I started, for example, another thing in the area of cryptocurrencies, right? I've been investing for a bit now because, again, I looked at it fairly early. Initially, I ditched it saying, what the heck is this? And later on, I came back to it, and that has also helped me, right? Those investments have also helped me. With all of these things, one of the things I've tried to do is try to find a technology that would be very relevant early on and see if you can do something there, right? So as an early adopter, of course, there is a possibility that it is just going to fail and flunk. But you make the attempt. And that learning process is brilliant because you have to go do a lot of the research yourself. On the technology itself, Google Cloud was interesting because of the way, why Google Cloud compared to the others? I could have done the same series on AWS or Azure, but I could see that was already a well-established area, right? And me doing additional work in that area, if I try to do videos or, awesome AWS channel, it might not have the big impact because there was considerable material in the market. Right? Whereas with Google Cloud, I was well early on, and there wasn't enough material in the community, right? So it just so happened again, right? I earned a reputation because I was a early adopter in a small area. Even though Google Cloud has been around for a bit, in the last few years, that they've really taken this out into market, and they're going very aggressively in the market, right, with respect to sales and partners. And today, I'm also working with some part of Google Cloud. Google Cloud hires me for certain kinds of things for
Nice.
helping Google's partners. So it's something that I do publicly anyway. So um, I can see that it is growing aggressively, and I can see the value for the community. And in terms of the technology being better, this is obviously a personal opinion. The people who love AWS or Azure and people who love Google Cloud, I think Google Cloud does a lot of things much better, right? Their technology seems to be more advanced. They seem to be more modern. Their research seems to be significant, especially in artificial intelligence, machine learning, security. And in a comparison, this is obviously biased. I think today Google Cloud stands out very well, right? On various factors. So if this did not work out for me, I'm not maniacally passionate about Google Cloud that I would do Google Cloud irrespective of what happened. For me, I see value in it. I see that it is relevant, it is useful, it is well executed, and there is it is a good set of technologies. And for that reason, I continue to be invested in it and learning in it. I mean, learning about it, and of course, teaching also on Google Cloud.
Awesome. I think there are a couple of things that really resonate with me as well there, right? Being an early adopter.
Yeah.
It's like, if you look in 28 minutes, we were focused initially on microservices, Java, and those areas.
Yeah.
And we wanted to create content on cloud and DevOps.
Mm-hmm.
And I started off actually with AWS, exactly what you're talking about. And we had significant failure there. We created around 6 to 8 courses. I would not call them failure. I mean, whoever students are learning from those courses are doing really, really well.
Yeah.
However, because there is huge amount of competition, like there are already well-established player, a lot of content in AWS and Azure, we did not have so much success. And exactly as you said, that's the reason why we switched towards Google Cloud, and we started creating content on Google Cloud. I mean, with the same quality, of course, but now we see more traction with Google Cloud because, as you say, I think being an early adopter has a very, very big advantage, right? I mean, there are risks, but there are also advantages. So it's like a trade-off. I mean, and the other thing that you're talking about, Google Cloud being advanced in specific areas, I think one area where it really is doing well, I would say one product which is really, really doing well is BigQuery, right? I would say BigQuery is one of the one of these services where I would say the competitors are really left behind. They are trying to catch up, but I think it would be a while before other cloud platforms would catch up on like data like analysis or machine learning, especially where in use cases where BigQuery is involved.
Yeah, you're right, actually. In fact, what I say during a lot of my talks is that BigQuery, I find, is the crown jewel within Google Cloud's offerings, where I see a lot of companies, they are front leading their engagement with Google Cloud with BigQuery, right? There are retail companies that I know, at least a couple of them that I talked to in the last couple of weeks, who have been, who have already established either some presence on AWS, or they have their own private data center, but for data analytics, BigQuery, artificial intelligence, machine learning, they're going with Google Cloud, right? So they say, keep everything else on a private data center, or if they're already engaged with AWS, do their virtual machines and all over there. But they're opening the doors into Google Cloud with data analytics, BigQuery, AIML, right? And that is growing. Once they realize that, hey, Google Cloud actually works better for certain things, there is more and more stickiness into Google Cloud and is expanding the number of people moving in there. In addition to that, I must give a huge congratulations to Thomas Kurian, right? This person has come in and changed how Google Cloud is perceived in the market, because it is not enough to just have brilliant technology, right? You need to have the entire organization going behind big projects, big customers. And they have done an amazing job. The last few years have been, has been such a such a positive. What is the word for it? The aggressiveness with Thomas Kurian has taken Google Cloud to the market has reaped a lot of benefits, right? Everybody is doing better. Google is doing better. The industry is doing better because they have access to technologies that some of the other cloud providers are not able to do it. In all of this, what you will also see is that apart from picking up a product like BigQuery or AIML, right? What Google is also doing is it is ensuring that there is a solid base of security and infrastructure that is just part of the platform, right? You don't think about security and all that. When your starting point might not be that, though it should be. Your starting point might you'll be looking at point products like this, but that solid base, which I think is better than what others provide, is a big winner. It creates a differentiator in the market for Google Cloud, and I'm glad to see customers are taking this up in a big way.
Yeah, I think Thomas Kurian made a huge difference to Google Cloud.
Huge,
like, from the time, like Google is more like, at least Google Cloud was more driven towards technology rather than towards the customers. And I think Thomas Kurian brought in a right amount of match between customer focus and technology focus. You need to match your technology to address a customer need. I think that's where Thomas Kurian was able to bring the entire organization focused towards the customer, right? So just like Jeff Bezos says, like, customer is the one who drives everything.
Yeah, on that, for me, it was amazing. I think when people should take learning from what Thomas Kurian has done in terms of saying that, the business part of it really matters, right? Because Google until then, Google Cloud was hardly known until about 2015, 2016. Though there were people like me using it, like you said, it was mostly, hey, we've got better technology. But that itself is not enough. And that comes back to the earlier point that we're talking about. You can have all the passion, right? All the amazing technology. But if you don't connect it and tie it also with revenues, it is not going to be sustainable. The other thing is that bringing in the business has had a virtuous cycle on the technology, because when more of the businesses come in, they have more demands on what the technology should be, right? And you can see that the technology creation has accelerated compared to what Google said in the beginning. Because in the beginning, they had only App Engine. They said, oh, everybody use App Engine. And then you realize that's not what customers want, right? And as more and more customers come in, you can see the number of products are growing, the security demand, the scale demand is growing. And I think it's a great learning to often lead along with technology also the business aspect, the sales aspect of anything that you're trying to put to market.
Absolutely. I think one fun thing to add in here is App Engine was there well before AWS really got popular, right? So it was 2008. I mean, almost the financial crisis time. Like, we're talking almost a decade and a half back when App Engine was offered as a service by Google Cloud. So it's quite a long while before that Google Cloud started. But as you said, it's picking up a lot of traction nowadays. Just to move away from that, Sathish, let's talk about certifications, right? I'll tell you my perspective on certifications a few years back. I worked in the industry for almost 20 years, and I had just one certification, which was Java certification. I really did not see a value for having certifications when it comes to Java or Python or things like that. But when it comes to cloud, somehow I felt there was a huge value in terms of doing a certification. Because when you say I'm using a cloud, I might be using App Engine, but I'm not be using rest of the services which are present in the Google Cloud, for example. And for me, a certification gives me a good perspective of all the things, all the services. Definitely, you'd want to deep dive into a few of these services, but a certification helps you in getting an overview of a lot of these services before you do a deep dive. What's your perspective on this, and why are you doing so many certifications?
So similar to what you said, right? Until I took my first Google certification, I didn't have even one, right? And a lot of us look down upon some of these people coming in with certifications in the early years, right? When I was doing Java and C and C++ and C# and all of that, exactly as you said, right? People come in with a job request, right? Or they apply for a job saying that I've taken a certification on Java, and you see that the quality of their knowledge, or just their knowledge itself, right, was nothing compared to what we were doing on the job, right? And I had that approach for quite a bit. But we should understand that certification has, there are two sides to why people do certification, right? One is from the person who wants to get, who's doing the certification, right? The candidate. The candidate has two reasons. One is that what you said, to ensure that you build a body of knowledge without just focusing on one project, right? If I take up a sample project and do it, I will just do one very narrow thing, but I don't know what else is possible, right? And today, for example, I'm doing Terraform, and I'm thinking, you know what? I'll probably try the Terraform certification, because in learning for the certification, I'm learning things that I wouldn't do on as part of the job, right? That's one thing. The second thing is, when a person is coming with a certification into, during a job request or a job application, they are not saying that they are competent in it. What they are saying is they've made the effort to get to a stage where they can go from there, right? So, for example, the example I give is of a person with a pilot, right? If they've got a certification of pilot, when the person comes in with a certification, you're not going to go say, here's a Boeing 747, fly it, right? You're going to put them through the steps to ensure that they know how to work, that, they will be a co-pilot first, and then you grow from there. But would you take up somebody to drive the flight without coming in with a certification? If they didn't have a certification, it becomes a qualification like a driving license or a medical license to say, here is somebody who's put in the effort and they know enough about it to go somewhere further after that, right? And though it might not be necessary in certain industries, for a job seeker, it becomes important, right? It's a gate. It's
an entry point.
It's an entry point, right? It's an entry point, a qualification that somebody can assess them on. Now, I could come in and say, there are two candidates who come in, one without a certificate and one with. Who would you give a first preference to for a conversation, right? Chances are you will give to the person with the thing, because you can see they've made the effort. The other person might be better, but for a company who's hiring, when a company is hiring 1,000 people today, some companies like, I don't want to name them, but they're hiring people, the Google Cloud professionals, in hundreds and thousands, right? If you go try to find a diamond in the rough, maybe they know Google Cloud very well, right? But how do they bubble up to with the visibility of the people hiring? So there is value on both sides, and I still do not hold the opinion that just because of certification you're good. I'm not, right? In the certification that I'm not good in it in certain cases, because I'm not constantly doing work in it, right? But it gives me the ability to move into another segment when that requirement comes in. Today, people come and ask me some question or a doubt. I say, I don't know, but I can do the research because I know in general about it, right? So that is very helpful. On the second part about why am I doing so many certifications, I really don't care too much about it, because, as I said, I prefer to be doing work in some of these things. But what has happened for me, at least, right, is that today I've built a reputation around Google Cloud certifications, and people come asking me questions about it, right? And not only about certifications, but about how to build a particular a particular solution that usually involves pulling together a lot of different tools and products within Google Cloud. So for two things: one, to help the community at stake certification, and the second thing, to have a large, wide knowledge of what Google Cloud is able to offer, right? So some of the sessions that I do today for Google Cloud's partners is talking about things as wide as infrastructure modernization, data-driven transformation, modernizing security, application development, productivity and collaboration. These are huge umbrellas, right? Pretty much all of Google products come under that. So it is necessary for the kind of role that I perform, one, for the community today, right? In advising them which certification you should follow, what are the kind of things you should expect. For that, it is useful. Then second, to help Google partners, again, I could use that information. So it's only for that reason. Whereas at the same time, I haven't spread myself up on all the certifications and all the clouds. I see people doing that, and I see that maybe they have value, right? Because they might have customers who come in from Google Cloud and AWS and who say, give me the best of these two, or maybe do a multi-cloud application that combines these two.
Yeah.
So for them to build that, to show that qualification, I think it is useful. I don't think it is necessary, but I think it's really, really useful for people who are trying to look for jobs, who are trying to look for new opportunities, um, and of course for your own personal learning, right? To say what else is possible, right? Is it just that one project and the five things? And this is another thing that I find with people who, like I myself probably had this. When I was in a company and I was hiring before, I'm working on one thing, right? I've been working on one thing for the last 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. Obviously, I've got a significant knowledge in it. A person coming from outside is not expected to know it, right? Because
Exactly.
it comes with other
Exactly.
skills. And it's
Exactly.
wrong to evaluate them saying that, hey, they don't know this particular deep topic that I worked on. Uh,
Absolutely.
what
Absolutely.
you're looking
Absolutely.
for is the ability to learn, right?
Yeah,
And as I
absolutely. I
shown,
think,
yeah,
yeah, as you say, that's one of the most important things that an interviewer should be aware of, right? So you would not want to question just based on your experience.
yeah,
You want to understand what he's experienced it and how good he is at what he's experienced it, and
absolutely.
also understand how good is he at learning new things, right?
Yeah.
This industry
We are,
is changing, and the ability to learn is what is differentiating. And I think, to add on to what you are saying, having more certifications uh, points to an ability to learn as well. So the more
yeah,
certifications you have, the more ability you have to learn. So it's a right signal you are seeing. Like I kind of see like all these as right signals. Whenever you're going to a new job, you
yeah,
want to give as many right signals as possible.
yeah.
And the more right signals you are sending, the higher the chances that the hiring manager would pick your resume over somebody else.
Absolutely. It does not mean that that person will be absolutely successful. There are,
Absolutely.
of course, other things, right? They need to apply
Absolutely.
themselves, they need to continue to learn. But in general, even though I have multiple certifications in Google Cloud, it's not something that I would recommend for others who are job seekers, right?
Okay.
If you want for the general learning, fine. But ideally, I would say pick an area that you want to really excel in and do more there. Maybe the
Yeah.
certification in that case is not all the Google Cloud certification. For
Mm.
example, if security is your interest, don't take every certification in Google Cloud, right? Take the security certification, the infrastructure certification in Google Cloud, and then do maybe security focused certifications, right?
Yeah.
So there's CSSP or something like that.
Yeah.
Similarly, for other things like data engineering, right? So that would be my recommendation. It's just that my role requires me to do more Google Cloud certifications, and I do it, right? It
I agree.
suits me.
I agree.
Yeah.
Like if you look at my experience, right? So I had 3 certifications on AWS. Now I have 4 on GCP, and I have 2 on Azure.
Yeah.
And like I think uh, if you are using Google Cloud extensively every day, then I think it makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense for you to go in depth, probably do all the possible certifications in your area work,
Yeah.
and also probably other areas if you are in depth in Google Cloud. But if like, but as you said earlier, there is also a value in spreading across multiple clouds. If you are an
For
architect,
certain
for
roles.
example, right?
Yeah.
If you are an architect,
Exactly.
it's good if you have a certification in Google Cloud, Azure, and probably AWS, because then you can provide the best possible solutions across the cloud, especially considering the fact that a lot of enterprises will be going multi-cloud. I mean, it's just a question
Absolutely.
of when. It's not
Yeah.
a question of whether they'll go multi-cloud. It's just a question of when, whether it's 5 years, a decade, or 2 decades down the line.
Yeah. No, you're right. So today I actually recommend people do like the basics, architect certification in all of these clouds if they are in such a role, right?
Mm.
And similarly in data engineering, today you have to you're running your applications on AWS, but running your data solutions on Google Cloud. Maybe there
Right.
is value in having an architect solution here. I mean, certification here and a data engineering certification here. So mix and match what is relevant for your career, and you don't have to necessarily pursue every single certification. One, it's a significant effort. I mean, investment in terms of effort. I don't. In fact, in certain cases, I've allowed some of my older certifications to lapse because I've let it expire because I'm not using it that much, right?
Mm.
And the next time I use it, I'll rather go do a certification then. I don't want to keep it live just for the ego thing of it, but
Absolutely.
I for the learning, for the appropriateness, I'm going to do that certification.
Okay. Just for viewers' information, how many certifications have you completed on Google Cloud? I remember the last number was 12x. Is that right?
I think there's a little bit of a thing in there, all right. So on LinkedIn, I think I've put 12x or something, but it also includes what is what is called the Google Authorized Trainer, right? So this is not an actual certification, but it's just that LinkedIn gives you only so much space, right? Only a certain number of characters, and you can't put all of them, right? So I've taken a little bit of leeway in saying it's 12x, but I have got all the actually, no, now I do not have, because 2 more have been introduced. So all the professional technical certifications and the Google Cloud Digital Leader and what was G Suite, which is no more there, I've had that at one point or the other, right? And the important ones, I continue to renew it. There is one that I don't have, because you need to be specially invited for that. There's one called the Hybrid Cloud, right? You can't just go and take that. So I don't have that. And there have been 2 more that have been introduced recently, because they've acquired this company called Looker. And Looker has 2 certifications that I haven't taken yet. But all the ones that were generally available until recently, all the technical professional ones, I have those, which I think amount to 11, plus the authorized trainer, right, which allows me to go teach Google Cloud to other companies. So those are the ones I have, including the architect, data engineer, machine learning, network, security, DevOps, developer, associate. There was a G Suite one, and I'm probably missing one, but yeah, well, using a couple. But this is not surprising to you, man. You also have done this, right? And your role, again, demands that you know all these different clouds. So it's not that you couldn't take up the others also. It's like
it's more, for me, it's a signal that you can learn a lot of things, and it's also sends a signal out that you are an expert there, right? I mean, especially on your side, for example, if you want to establish yourself as an expert at Google Cloud, one of the options you always have is to build a community. The other option you have is to do so many certifications that people would take notice, right? I think, it's kind of a nice signal. I mean, I'm a great believer that a certification is not the final determinant of value, as you are saying.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. It's just a signal, right? As a starting point of the discussion. Today, you are talking with me, or I got a chance to know you just because I saw that you are doing great work on the community, as well as you have done a lot of certifications on Google Cloud. It's just a signal.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's with any kind of profession that demands a certain amount of expertise. Would you go to a doctor, a witch doctor, who doesn't have a proper license? Would you go fly in a plane with a pilot who says, "No, I have practice at home"? Exactly. There are certain industries that require a significant amount of knowledge before you can even start working there, right? There are, of course, certain industries that don't require to do that. But cloud today is being used by everybody, right? Financial institution, healthcare institution, retail institutions, governments, and you want to ensure that people working in that, similar to your medical field, the law field, or pharmaceutical field, you want to ensure that the people who are coming in have the qualifications, which means that they at least have that basic understanding, which might be which might not really translate to everything they do after. Every person who's got a pilot license maybe is not a great pilot. Everybody who's got an MBBS is probably not a great doctor, right? But it sets a good bar, right? It sets a good bar to ensure that we have people who are managing these highly sensitive systems. We want that, right? We want qualified people.
Agree.
There's one thing I would say on the earlier one, though. You said I was an expert on Google Cloud. Honestly, I don't consider myself that, right? If we stayed true to what we discussed earlier, was that just because you have the certification does not mean you're an expert, right? You need to apply yourself over a long period of time. Exactly. For the 11, 12 certifications that I have, I will never, ever have the kind of time to apply myself in all those areas, right? Absolutely. So today, in fact, today I launched a new video series called Labs on the AwesomeGCP channel, because I realized that when somebody asks me a doubt, or if I'm preparing the video, I realize that I don't know a lot of things, right? So today's was something about VPC service controls. I don't know that. So what do I have to do? I have to go learn that. So I'm not an expert in the sense that I know everything, but I know I have the confidence to go look for these things when the occasion arises, right?
So I'm interrupt you there. I mean, what I mean by an expert is not about my definition of expert is not somebody who knows everything. My definition of expert is somebody who knows the limits of his knowledge. As they say, the more you know something, the more you know that don't know everything about it, right? So it's more like you know the boundaries of what you know, and you don't know what you know, right? That's the expert for me, right? So it's like when you start with somebody, you think, hey, it's easy, or you don't know what is complex about it. The more you know about it, the more you understand it, the more you'll realize what are the limits of your knowledge.
I think that's exactly what these certifications kind of give you, actually, right? They kind of give you a certain humility and understanding that there is a lot that I don't grasp, right? It just opens you up to the volume of things. It's like traveling abroad. If you just lived your entire life in your little town, you think that's the world, right? But when you go out, you realize it's completely different, right? And it brings back a certain humility to say, you know what, I don't know this, but I'm willing to learn. And you apply yourself, right? Exactly. Instead of just sitting and saying that, I'm an expert at this, I know everything. So that's a good outcome of doing the certifications, honestly.
Absolutely.
From a personal,
there would be a lot of people who would be watching this who would be very new to Google Cloud, right? So a lot of my audience would be more on microservices, Spring Boot, and a lot of them would want to get started with Google Cloud and probably do a few certifications, right? So what is the path that you would recommend for somebody who's getting started on Google Cloud right now?
If you're looking a certification-oriented approach, then I would strongly recommend that you start with the Associate Cloud Engineer, right? The Associate Cloud Engineer contains all the key things that you will be doing in any cloud. So, for example, the key things will be infrastructure, security, identity management, storage, networking, things like these that are the base for anything else you do, right? So, for example, when you take the professional architect or the data engineer or the machine learning, it is expected that you know things like identity, security, networking, right? So start with the associate cloud engineer. It sets a very solid foundation for anything else that you do. And remember that the certification is not just to get a feather in your cap. It's about really applying yourself. And these are the things where you start, right? Now, it is not that people can't directly do the data engineering. People who come from a data engineering background in general, they take to data engineering fairly easily. There's not much for them, right? But they might be missing core principles about how Google Cloud itself operates, right? And I always recommend the associate engineer certification first, and then do something else.
Okay. So you'd say start with ACE and then go towards either data engineer or architect or developer, whichever, depending on what your role is.
Exactly.
Do you see, recently Google Cloud also introduced the Cloud Digital Leader certification, right? So do you see that as an entry point for somebody who's not really technical?
Absolutely. I won't say it is not for somebody not technical, right?
Okay.
The Cloud Digital Leader certification also has a certain amount of technology knowledge that you require. So today, in a lot of sessions that I'm doing, I'm talking to sales, who are taking Google Cloud to market, and I recommend the Google Cloud the Cloud Digital Leader certification for them, because when they talk to a customer, they have to have a good base of technology, right? The customer is not just going to say, give us whatever you want, right? They're going to question you about why use this product, and they have to know at a fairly high level what are the advantages of Google Cloud, why are certain products differentiated in the market compared to what is provided by AWS, Azure, or others, in a certain customer requirement to set up a data center or to build an application. What would be the key products that you would use, right? You want to have that knowledge in it. You don't want to be calling somebody and say, I'll call a friend and find out what that is, right? When you go to meet the customer, you want to have that knowledge. Similarly, people who are running a project, right, who are interfacing with the customer on the project execution, they have to know just enough to have that conversation and to provide and to be the conduit between the core engineering team and the customer, right? So it wouldn't be for somebody who wants to continue having zero knowledge of Google Cloud. It's for somebody who wants to have some knowledge of Google Cloud without getting into the execution and implementation details of the project. Okay. And I would say it's a very good starting point, right? It's a little before the ACE. So start with the CDL, maybe, if you want. If that's I think it would make reasonable sense. Then maybe do the ACE and then the others.
Okay, so you are saying, so CDL would be almost equivalent, like for other learners who are new to Google Cloud and probably familiar with Azure or like AWS. CDL would be very similar to Azure fundamentals, or AZ900, or it would be very, very similar to Cloud Practitioner on AWS side. It's a little bit more complex, I guess. It's a little bit more technical than those. It's not as entry level as AZ900 and probably the Cloud Practitioner are. But as Sathish is saying, it's a little bit more technical than that, right?
It might be. No, I haven't done those particular certification mentioned, so it's not fair for me to make a judgment.
Okay.
But the cloud digital leader would be somewhere close to the professional architect without the core implementation and technical details. So in the professional architect, they might say, you know what is the sub command to do this? What is the option that you have to give to get some particular setting? They don't ask you questions like that. It's mostly at a very high level. How do you put this product as part of a data pipeline? If you had to, if somebody had to come in and they come in with the requirement saying that I want to store images and videos, what kind of storage would you choose among the 6 or 10 options that Google Cloud has? Which would be the appropriate one to choose, right? How do you build scalability? How do you have security? So those kind of things are.
So it's more about choice of a service rather than about implementation. So how do you?
It will be more about that.
Specific use case. What is the service you would want to make use of, rather than how do you implement it?
Yeah, that would be.
Cool. I think Sathish, we have about 5 minutes more. So probably we'll talk a little bit about your GitHub repository, AwesomeGCP, and also your YouTube channel, right? So please go ahead, Alec. So what is the kind of, like one of the things I really loved about the AwesomeGCP GitHub repo is the fact that it's community driven, right? So you are accepting pull requests. I sent one for ACE. I was very, very lazy to send one for other certification courses that we created, but I'll do that very soon. But I see that you have built up, it's more a community driven thing right now. So just like you were talking about from the start about community, I think AwesomeGCP GitHub repository is a very good example of what you were able to create. I mean, the entire community is to like contributing. When I go there, I see a lot of pull requests coming in from people, and it's amazing to see such kind of interactions. And also your YouTube channel, right? So you're creating some awesome content there. So what's your approach towards that?
Well, again, it was not particularly planned. I see that there's benefit for the community, and it just keeps snowballing, right? To an extent that people value it. So I do more of it. People value it. And one of the amazing things I should say this is on LinkedIn, there is this practice nowadays of tagging people who've helped you achieve a certification, right? It's not something that you often see. And I think it's such a great motivator for creators like me to say, somebody has got benefit. When I say whether it's career, they've improved the income they're making, they're able to travel somewhere because of these. That's really nice. And I think people doing that should continue doing that, not just for me, right? I see them tagging you and Dan Sullivan and Anthony and all of the others. And it's such a wonderful thing. On the AwesomeGCP GitHub repo, this was there was another one that this person called, I don't know how to pronounce his name properly, but I think his name is David Das Nevis, and he had contacted me on LinkedIn long back, and at that time he was working for Google. I think he was working for Google, and he said, "Hey, can we put together a repository?" And he started the repository. I contributed to it, and later on he moved out. He wasn't doing that much, but even by then I had started doing my own things. Right, it was already in my plans to do the GitHub repo. But then when he asked me at exactly the same time, I said, "Cool, I'll just contribute to yours." Then when he kind of moved out of it, he stopped maintaining the repo, and I said, maybe I want to do it differently, right? So I took some of the initial things that we had put together and reformatted in ways which I thought was more appropriate, right? So today I maintain that repo, and it's not something that only we do. The whole Awesome series, right? There's Awesome Go, Awesome Python, Awesome Machine Learning, Awesome TensorFlow. It's just a series of an approach on GitHub that people collect resources on, right? So this just happened to be the one for AwesomeGCP certifications. And the YouTube channel, of course, is entirely my own, and there's significant amount of effort that goes into that. Even there, my approach was not necessarily to create a course, because I could see others were doing it, right? Now you have courses. At that point, there was Linux Academy, a Cloud Guru, a bunch of people are creating the courses. So in all of these things that I've been doing, even the kind of work that I do in general, the kind of projects that I pick up, I look for things that are an underserved market, or which is an early thing, right, where nobody has done something, and say, can we experiment there? And what I realized was that a lot of the courses, right, even today, they typically tell you how to do some things, right? And it kind of follows a documentation structure where they say, here is a product, here's how you do it, here's how you, how you do one particular thing. But what I realized was that in projects, in the real world, right, you need to have a way to apply that knowledge. A customer is not going to come and ask you, hey, what is a VPC? Right? That's not what they ask you. They don't ask you, explain BigQuery to me. Right? That's not what the customer wants. The customer says, I've got data where I want to do something. Right? I want to apply analytics. I want to do AML. How do I do that? Right? And the Google Cloud practice questions, the certification and the practice questions there takes that approach. It's a project scenario.
Absolutely.
And I saw that was a gap. I saw that was missing in the community or the market, where somebody is saying, here is a project scenario, what are my options? Because decision making is very important, right? You've got 10 options. If somebody asks you to explain BigQuery or Bigtable, I've got a ready-made response for that. But if they ask you, here is a data source, what should I apply? Now it's your work to apply. So I took that approach to fill a market that was not there. But no, very honestly, I'll tell you right from the beginning. Since I had done it from the beginning, what I see is some of the things that I do early on, a lot of the people do similar stuff, they copy it and say they do it much better. And I kind of expected that there would be companies that take up the same approach, and I haven't seen too many people do that, right? So I continue to do the Q&A kind of approach, but now it is growing. As in when I discover something else today, for example, I started the lab. So that was the mindset, or that was a goal I had, one, to fill in a necessary gap, which I thought was missing, and to also allow people to not only learn for certifications, but to learn to apply it in real world projects where customers come and demand a certain solution, right? They're not demanding a theoretical answer. They're asking you to make decisions as an architect. So it's to give people that practice, that AwesomeGCP, that format, I would say, started, right, of Q&A and applying this.
Cool. That's really great. I've actually included a few links to the AwesomeGCP GitHub repository. I've included the link to the AwesomeGCP YouTube channel in the description. I'll also add in a comment a little later, putting the links out there. So if any of you guys are interested in checking out the content, do that. I would actually recommend you to check out the content out there. I've really benefited from the AwesomeGCP GitHub repository specifically, because I mean, the amount of work that went into consolidating those resources is amazing. It's really awesome if you are learning GCP. So I would definitely recommend you to check that out.
And also, please contribute, because what's happening today is I'm not following, as I said, I'm not following all of my 11 certification, 12 certification on a daily basis, right? So chances are that today, one of the learning certification, you might come across a good article or a course that I wouldn't for some time, right? So I I encourage you to send in that pull request, contribute to it, so that everybody in the community benefits, right? Because you are probably going to see it more often than I do, right? If you are focusing on a certification.
Cool. That's great to hear, Sathish. I mean, let's switch over from Sathish, the GCP guy or the Google Cloud guy, to Sathish, the person, right? So what are the things that make you work so hard, right? You are doing so many different things right now. You are an investor. You are doing really, really good with GCP. You are doing consulting. You are doing, for example, you're creating YouTube videos. So there are a lot of places where you are working on. So what gives you the motivation and what makes you drive so hard?
Honestly, I don't know. I think the discussion we had earlier about nature and nurture, right? I don't know. It's just my nature that I want to keep doing stuff. And I generally have a wide range of interests, which could be both a blessing and a curse, right? I love sports. I love movies. I love photography. I love every single technology that I see today. I love robotics and cryptocurrency, and I like investments and, like financial investments and all of that. So maybe it's just a part of my nature that, to have a wide range of interests. But at the same time, you need to be able to pick your battles, right? You have to start contributing back to the world, back to the community, where you can make the greatest impact. If I did a video series on cryptocurrency, that it's a dime a dozen, right? Exactly. So this I see has significant value, and that is kind of, like I said, motivating to continue. But of course, it also has to be balanced, like I said, with revenues and income. Luckily, I'm at a stage where, um, even though this takes up a huge amount of time and effort without necessarily giving anything back monetarily or financially, I can still continue to do it for the benefit of everybody. So yeah, it's difficult to say what motivates me, but at least I know I'm interested in continuing to do that.
Okay. And how are you able to do so many things so productively? Any tips for the learners as far as how you go about doing things or how you are being productive are concerned?
One, of course, is, like I said, pick your battles, right? You and pick areas where you can stand out compared to other things. One of the discussions we had was about being a small fish in a big pond, or being a big fish in a small pond, right? You and I, from what you're saying right now, you changed course, you changed direction to say, let's pick up Google Cloud because that is a growing market, right? So absolutely, in the things that I've done, if you're an early adopter, and sometimes the early adopter thing fails, you take up something and it doesn't do very well, right? But in certain cases where it becomes successful, it becomes very successful, right? If something like reputation is what you are going behind. So that would be one thing. The second thing is in terms of productivity. It's difficult for me to say because I have a lot of interest. I kind of split my time across many things, and I try to spend a lot of time with my family. I don't want to shortchange them in any way. But depending on where you're in a career, you might want to pick up multiple things. From what I understand, a lot of people here might be new. They might be coming into like for new job aspirations and all. One approach would be to do everything that you can, right? Because you don't know what is involved. Today, you get a chance to do something in AML, go do a project there. To another chance to do a lab on, say, infrastructure and security, do that there. Because things are not going to be extremely narrow. Excuse me. Usually, it is going to be a combination of these different technologies, right? So even things like learning a language, right? If you want to learn English very well, do that, right? Because it helps to have that conversation with more and more people. You want to learn about music, do that, right? Whether it's technology or other personal interests, approach everything with a learning mindset and say, just try it on for now. But later on in the career, you might have to narrow it because you don't have the time for everything else, right? You have to manage people, you have to travel, you've got family to take care of. And therefore, at that point, you can probably be more focused and say, these are 2 or 3 things that I like the most, and I'm going to focus on this. Say, for example, Google Cloud is what I'm doing now, though I've got also other parallel interests. So I wouldn't give a universal advice to everybody, depending on where you are in your career, where you're starting off. In certain cases, be prolific about everything that you learn. And in certain other cases, be point focused and say, let me become an expert. And again, depending on, I do know that certain people have taken one technology and chosen to be extremely in-depth. They've also got success.
Yeah.
People like me who tend to be a generalist, who say, I know a bunch of different technologies. I know up to a certain depth, but it's not that, it's not, or rather, people have found success being a generalist also.
So there is no one formula that works for everybody. You have to,
absolutely.
But I think to summarize what you're saying, it's pick your battles, like pick the right things to focus on, and make sure that you put your 100% on it to be really good at what you want to do.
Also, also, I would say evaluate yourself and make sure that you see if you're going the right direction, because many times you pick a direction out of passion or interest and you realize that's not getting us anywhere, right? Yeah. And you have to be able to take the decision to stop that.
Absolutely.
And say, hey, you know what, we should do something else.
Yeah, so you have to incorporate some kind of feedback so that you make appropriate decisions whether you want to continue or not. Yeah. That's awesome, Sathish. I mean, it's been a really interesting conversation. Any final words that you'd want to add to the viewers?
Just that I wish you would learn all the things that you're trying to learn and be extremely successful. For those looking for jobs and all, there are so many opportunities, right? And if you apply yourself, you would be able to do well, right? Especially if you're a job seeker. The amount of opportunities out there, especially in the cloud market, just enormous. Companies are reaching out to me regularly saying, do you have people you can recommend for this? We are looking for this role, we're looking at that role. Yeah. So the opportunities are there. please apply yourself. Take the courses that Ranga provides. You can watch the free YouTube videos that I have, and I wish you all success.
It's great talking with you, Satish.
Thank you,
I'll
Ranga.
We'll get in touch again. Thank you for
Cool.
being here.
Thank you for having me, man.